spent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first, so let's get started. It's our last show of 2024. And this was all the episodes. This is with group chat, this is with HardFoul Radio, this is with A&M. This is our last show here on this network of 2024. And so I went over and I was thinking about this a bunch, and this is gonna feel like, if I've ever done a podcast that feels like rambling, this is gonna be the one that feels like rambling. I've done this for way longer than I'd probably care to admit, in terms of if you want to look at from a perception level of success. I genuinely just love doing this, so it doesn't really matter to me 1 subscriber, 1 million subscribers. Yes, there's things obviously that are cool that come with more success, 1,000%. But I genuinely just love this. And this is why today's episode is weird. Tony is going to be joining us later in the episode. We are going to have more of a traditional, what we do here. Tony's going to come on. We're going to talk about the NFL. And we're going to talk about comparing our preseason picks to our how the season actually played out, right, wrong, etc. This episode is going to contain, though, primarily a couple of pleas. A plea to sports media, a plea to sports fans, let's start. This is my plea to sports media. We all know the normal things that people say about sports media. They're too biased. They're too big market focused. They're too big on hot takes. And all of these things are true. But I saw something the other day, and it was a tweet, but it resonated with me probably more than it should have. And it was, remember when SportsCenter was just a bunch of sports nerds who were journalism majors, or journalism nerds who were really into sports? Let's go back to that. And I thought about that, and again, way longer than I should have. And I was like, yeah. At one point, sports media, now when money gets involved in anything, and ESPN, FS1, these companies, Barstool, etc., who make all this money off talking about sports, money's going to always mess with the original process. I understand that. I'm not here to say that's naive. I'm somebody who's attempting to do this to some degree to earn money. Somewhat passion project, but yes, to earn money at some point. And it is tough when something gets corrupted like that, where it is now who can be the most entertaining, who can be the loudest, who can give you the best hot take, who's trending that day. Look, I grew up on a SportsCenter where I used to walk home from middle school, and Stuart Scott, rest in peace, and Chris Berman were on SportsCenter, the 3 o'clock hour. And that was big time. Those were the two biggest guys in the space at that point in time. And they were fun, they were entertaining, but they were also knowledgeable. They weren't so clearly rooted in their sports team fandom that it dictated every single thing that they said. They didn't feel bigger than everyone, even though we all knew they were well compensated. We all knew they were, well taken care of. They were great at what they did. We knew that. We saw that. But that's not what made them great. Go back. You can be more than just entertaining. You can be more than just loud. You could be knowledgeable. I remember watching SportsCenter back then, and not just those two, but a bunch of people who could not only give you a breakdown of a game that happened that day, but they could reference something that happened historically, and that's how you used to learn about sports. Look, the NBA and Major League Baseball, they've had 82 and 162 game seasons forever. That's not new. Hasn't changed. It's not new. It's been there. But why are games now suddenly so much more boring, quote unquote, a random NBA game on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night versus back then? And now there's even more nationally broadcasted games. We didn't always have. We used to just have, you got Wednesday night basketball, Friday night basketball, and whatever was your local cable package with your team. And that was it. Now we get Wednesday games, we get some Tuesday games, we get Saturday games, Friday games, Sunday. Like, we have so much more access to this, but why are they more boring? Oh, well, it's the play style. Guys are shooting too many threes, or, here's the reality. Sports media is just not as good as it once was. And it's because these guys have gone from being knowledgeable or teachers or introspective to different degrees to just being entertaining. And look, I'm not going to change everything with one podcast or one video. No one is. But as someone who's way too invested in this stuff, who cares way too much about this kind of a thing, whose heart rate was way too high during the last 10 minutes of Broncos-Bengals. I've said before, liking sports is probably some kind of mental illness, and one day we'll figure that out. Doctors will discover, like, yeah, you actually lose 10 years off your life by being a sports fan. Probably true. But media, I'm begging with you here. And again, we're not going to change, but can we just own one thing in 2025? Can we just own being wrong? Can you just own being wrong? And I'm not talking about the over dramatic wrong or the over, staging some big play or scene or, segment about, oh my gosh, let's make fun of him because he said that. Just own being wrong when you analyze teams, players. Sports are full of wrong. Sports are literally full of people being wrong. Let's take the NFL, for example. Biggest sport in the world, maybe the biggest product in the world, a sports league that is so big, so massive, and is just breaking records every time it's just on TV now or on a streaming site apparently, that even with numbers that are 1,000% being taken away, like NBA guys are like, oh, well, numbers are down because people are illegally streaming games. Trust me, they're illegally streaming NFL games too. Huge product. That league is carried by people who were wrong. The difference is, in that league, when people are wrong, they get fired. Media personalities could be wrong. Nothing happens as long as they're entertaining. And I'm not saying you got to shoot 100%, but just own it. Again, no one here is, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. No one has to be the smartest guy or the most correct guy or the most, correct predictor of events. Yes, that stuff's cool when it happens, but let it naturally happen. Let it organically happen. I said this with the MVP thing. Let Josh Allen win an MVP naturally or organically, not just because people are tired of Lamar Jackson winning MVPs. Speaking of, I said the NFL was literally a league. It's a bunch of people being wrong. Who are the 4 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now? I think we've clearly decided 4 guys. And I'll even talk about the 5th because it works for him as well. We've decided, and I think this is valid, Mahomes, Allen. I'm not ranking these 1 through 5, so this isn't a list. Just the 5 guys, no particular order. Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, And if you want to throw Herbert in there, fine. He's probably at the best case right now for the 5th spot. I would have said probably the year prior, maybe Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts also qualifies for this. But let's just stick with those 5. Justin Herbert wasn't the first quarterback drafted in his class. In fact, there were arguments between him and Tua multiple years into their career. Who was better? Who would you rather start a franchise with? Lamar, we all know what happened with him. Not only did he go down to the 32nd pick in the draft, so everybody passed on him, and I mean literally everybody, because the team that drafted him, the Baltimore Ravens, they went back into the first round to get him because they passed on him once. Mahomes went 10th. And no one was thinking, we love these redraft shows. And every single one of these quarterbacks, if you got to do the redraft, the only one that would be contention for number 1 overall pick is Burrow and Herbert because they're in the same class. And Burrow's the only guy who he did go first overall. But then Josh Allen was a project quarterback out of Wyoming who a lot of teams didn't want to touch. You know what that is? That's admitting we were wrong. We were wrong as a consensus about Lamar Jackson. How no one thought Lamar Jackson coming out of Louisville could have been a 2-time, potentially 3, in my opinion, should be a 3-time NFL MVP quarterback. No one thought Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming would have been a close to MVP level, clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Mahomes, he came from Texas Tech. The last notable Texas Tech player is Michael Crabtree. No one thought Mahomes was going to do this, be a 3-time champion, gone to 4 Super Bowls, put up one of the most impressive starts to a career in the history of sports in general. Guess what that is? Acknowledging you're wrong. Don't just change the circumstances because you need to get a bit off or you need to prove a point. Let's start with someone who, and I'm not going to name names here because all these guys, congrats. You're all more successful. You're all in spaces I truly wish I could be, but that's because I believe I could bring a different perspective to how this stuff is talked about, informing to the public who can't sit around their TV and watch sports all day. I'll hit close to home. We'll stay in the NFL. The Broncos were a team almost everybody was wrong about. A lot of fans who were down on the team. A lot of media personalities down on the team. And even Vegas had them as a 5.5 win team. Now, I was high on them, but guess what? I'm a fan. I'm always going to be higher on them than what people think. I think they're better than what people think they are now. And some of that is buried in delusion. And I'm willing to admit that. I don't change all my opinions around that. There's clearly teams I would tell you are better than them. Clearly the Chiefs, the Bills, I would even say the Bengals, even though their defense is atrocious. But we just saw that game play out on Saturday night. Steelers, I think it's close, and the Texans, I think it's close, but they're better. The Chargers, I think, is probably their closest, even though the Chargers went 2-0 against them. I don't think that was really a representation of, they just clearly dominated and clearly the better team. They're close. What they did, everybody said, Denver's bad, Denver's bad, Denver's bad. And let's take their quarterback, Bo Nix. Laughed at, mocked, everything you could say. 6 quarterback taking 12th overall. Oh my gosh, he's going to be a bust. We've all seen the clips now that become more famous. He's not good. He's going to be a bust. What is Denver doing? This is a Sean Payton cope experiment. He's trying to prove he's smarter than everybody. And without total heartbreak of mine, they'll be in the playoffs. So let's go to this analyst I was talking about, who ripped into Denver to start the season and literally lied. Denver was a 5.5 win team for Vegas. He predicted them to win 5 games and finish second to last in the division. He thought really low of the Raiders. Then he went to his reasons. One good offensive lineman, or one lineman of note, which was Garrett Bowles, referenced the Denver Broncos giving up 50-plus sacks, a defense that the only reference point he can make was gave up 70 points in a game, and that even though they beat the Kansas City Chiefs, oh well, it's just hard to beat someone 18 times in a row. Sutton he dismissed, and Bo Nix he said he had no confidence in, and Sean Payton he said, well, now we need to see it. You're now officially several years removed from Drew Brees. Let's see it. Same guy talked about the Bears. Said the Bears have the best situation ever for a number 1 overall pick. And I like Caleb Williams. Let me be very clear here. I like Caleb. Best situation ever. They have receivers. They have a great defense. The offensive line, it's not that great, but I feel like they'll figure it out, and Caleb's good enough, and I like the running back. Everything was positive. Bears season starts going to hell, and he starts going, well, the coach is actually who I gave props earlier. The coach has always been bad. Well, look at his record. It's always been bad. Well, you didn't reference that when you said this is the best situation ever for number 1 overall pick. Your offensive line is horrible. You didn't reference that when you said it's the best situation ever for number 1 overall pick. Defense has defense. Yeah, it's good, but it's not really. You hyped up and spoke glowingly of all these things in the offseason. And to your credit, a lot of people were really high on the Bears. I thought the Bears are going to be really good. I thought there was going to be I thought that division, now I got the teams wrong. I thought the Vikings were going to finish in 4th place because of the JJ injury. But I went Vikings, Bears, Packers, Lions, and I thought 3 of those teams could potentially make the playoffs. Now, it's still going to turn out that way, just flip-flop the Bears and Vikings. And then when Bo came up and the Broncos came up in discussion, he's like, well, of course Bo Nix is playing better. I don't think he's better, but of course he's playing better than Caleb because he has a great defense and a great offensive line. He even called it a top 3 offensive line in football. Well, that's funny because you didn't think that going into the season, and guess what? The guys haven't changed. And it's not like you said, hey, look, I was wrong on Denver. I was wrong. They actually have, because they went into free agency and got Powers and Mike McGlinchey, and they've drafted Bowles and Miners. And all 4 of these guys, at center they downgraded. We lost Lloyd Cushenberry. They upgraded in 4 positions. You didn't say that. You didn't say, actually, you know what? Cortland Sutton is the one. Marvin Mims and the Sean Payton offenses continue to improve. Bo is just flat out better than even if you don't think he's as good as Caleb, fine. I'm not asking for that. But if you're like, hey, look, he is better than I thought. He is playing better than I thought. And this defense, even though I didn't know the names, we all knew they had Pat Surtain, who's now established himself as the best corner in football, bar none, but was always in the conversation. They got Zach Allen in free agency. They drafted Riley Moss a year ago, and he is now 2nd year in the program, 1st year starting. They went out and got Jones at safety to make improvements to this defense. They have invested a lot of draft capital into their pass rushers. Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper. And you could say this is personal. I'm just upset because they said Denver wasn't going to be any good. No, I'm upset because the way they like to portray these scenarios, they like to portray their opinions as facts, and there was never the acknowledgement of being wrong unless truly hand just held to the fire and it's just pick a game. Oh, I was wrong on picking that game. And I'm not saying everything wrong has to be some grand indictment. It doesn't. But don't make everything wrong a grand indictment, and don't make everything that you get right or predict some grand saving or some grand, oh, I just know this 120% in fact, and nothing could dispute this, and I'm just so right. And like this arrogant and pompous mentality. And I know it's your shtick, but get a new shtick. This is my plea to sports media. And the other part of this, and why I think Denver is interesting, and the first one to say this, I don't talk about every single team in depth. I just can't. You know why? Because I refuse, and this is a wild thing to say. This is the other part, this is the other half of my plea. Can we start watching the games that we are going on national television or going on YouTube to talk about? There's a million takes that are said. Millions probably a stretch, guys, but trying to be dramatic here. How many takes are said by people who aren't actively and actually watching all of these games? They just look at a record and they look at stats and they go, okay, I can make an opinion based off this. Fine. By definition, you can make an opinion off of just looking at record and stats. But it's ill-informed and has no real bearing because you haven't even watched what went into making those stats. Let's stay on the rookie QB discourse. Again, I think Caleb's talent is through the roof, and I like Caleb Williams a lot. But these people over the last 2 or 3 weeks that have been like, hey, look at his total numbers, 3,000 plus yards, not that many interceptions. Look at Caleb. You would have thought he was having a horrible season. He did. He was, and he is. Because the majority of his stats, similar to the Joe Burrow MVP people, when you're down in your Caleb Williams situation and you're down 20 plus nothing to the 49ers, and you're down 20 plus to Detroit twice, and you're down big to the Packers, and you're down big, when you are down big in all of these games, and your numbers don't come against what the defensive game plan was for you, that already worked, and they got such a big lead, they could start playing basic coverages. They could start playing more, I don't want to say prevent, but prevent-ish. Because all I heard for the people that, with sports media, you guys got to stop being like, when you're trying to give actual analysis, stop just trying to give it from the fan perspective. You are in a position where you are supposed to speak. You're speaking to fans, not from a fan, for the most part. Don't just because you like and you put a huge take flag in the middle of the ground on Caleb Williams is going to be this generational all-time guy. When Bo had his comeback against the Chargers that fell short, I was told all those numbers are meaningless. They were down 23-0. But now I'm supposed to believe Caleb Williams' numbers are legit, and he's having this supposedly great season when most of his numbers have come while he's been down. And then I see the passing charts. And yes, the passing charts are real, but we also have an eye test. All these quarterbacks, when they're young, and just a staple of the modern NFL game, Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Sean McVay, they like these quick screen, eliminate the pass rush, get the ball into one of your playmakers' hands. They like doing this stuff. So when you say, hey, he's only throwing the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage, everybody is. Go look at everybody's yards after catch. It's up across the league. Across the league. Not saying some guys don't do it more than others, but it's up across the league. TNT, we all love Inside the NBA. I grew up on Inside the NBA. It's fantastic. Great show. Shaq, Chuck, Ernie, Kenny. Maybe the greatest show in the history of sports television. It's in that class. They don't watch the games. I heard, and this isn't to them directly, but I want to prove a point here. I heard someone say, just as last week, man, the Pelicans really have nobody. They're talentless. Now they reference Zion and B.I. were out. Okay. So C.J. McCollum, Trey Murphy, Yves Messi, who's arguably playing Rookie of the Year level-esque, not saying he's going to win it, but he's up there. Jose Alvarado, who's also missed time, by the way. Herb Jones. I wish Najee was still there. This is the team that has no talent besides B.I. and Zion? I just named you 5 guys outside of their top 2. Look, the NBA top 2 players, I saw this stat the other day. Teams that are missing one or they're missing both of their top 2 guys. It was 0-6. The Pelicans, who have played 26 games, are their top 2 guys. 0-26. But no one's watching. They're just seeing that the Pelicans have a cursed season for sure. All these injuries, this is just an anomaly. Fine. But let's just be, can we be honest? And this is crazy. I'm asking for like some accountability and to watch the games. Cam Newton last week. I think baseball's a dying sport. Cam, 5 years ago, absolutely. Baseball was in a really rough spot. It was losing out on popularity. It was losing out on streaming numbers. It was losing out. And money was always coming in. This is not a matter of money. But it was losing enjoyment. It was losing having pull. For you to sit there and stop what you're doing to go watch a baseball game, there weren't 20 notable baseball players. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I would have told you, Cam, you're absolutely right. Baseball, with the and Rob Manfred, I give a lot of shit to. But the inception of the pitch clock, what LA, however you feel about the salary cap or not, what they've done with Shohei and Freeman and Betts and consistent winning and success, it's working. This World Series was proof. Stars in New York, stars in LA. And Cam, ask yourself, or anybody who's willing to make that take, because I've been very critical across my channel's history of how I feel like MLB is dropping the ball. But I never once said it wasn't because of lack of a talent, because baseball has arguably had more talent for its sport than either of the other two, being the NFL or NBA. That you didn't market very well. But Aaron Judge, Juan Soto in New York, Freeman, Ohtani, Betts in LA, Trout is Trout, even though he's unfortunately had such an injury-riddled last couple of years. Have you watched Cam or anyone making this take? Have you watched 60, 70 games? I'm just giving you did you watch half the season of a professional baseball team? Did you watch half a season worth of games across all 30? Like, you just get 81 games, all 30 teams total. I'll end with here because I believe it's only fair to be accountable as well. I bring on people to talk college football, talk WNBA, shout out to Tony. I bring on people that are fans of different franchises and sports teams. Will's a Chicago fan. Again, Tony's a Baltimore fan. I brought on Charger fans. I even brought on a new friend of mine who's into reffing, because growing up, I was just always very anti-ref. No one really likes the refs. But I wanted someone who could come on here, shout out to Danny, who could come on here and break down actual scenarios the way they try to do and do and give Fox some credit and CBS, where they bring in the referee real time for the games. The presentation for a lot of these games, the NBA, the NFL, really well done as far as an on-court product or on-site team, excuse me, for the media part behind it. But this is to the First Takes, Sports Center, First Thing First, Colin Cowherd, all these guys that are huge in the space, and it's not all of them. And I like a lot of them. Trust me, I do. I literally consume some of these shows from 7 a.m. up until 3:30, right before I get ready to record myself. But I'm asking you, I'm begging you, I'm making a plea. Can we just be better in 2025? Can we have some accountability? If you're wrong, say you're wrong. And can we just actually watch the games, please? I know that's crazy, but can we actually watch the games? This is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back momentarily. And with that, we are welcomed by the richest man y'all will never meet, and my co-host on the group chat podcast. Tony's in the building. How we doing, man?
What's going on, man?
So, excuse me, excuse me. Um, I don't want to rehash. I know a lot of people. Again, there's a lot of MVP talk going on. I think you and I have been pretty clear on our point as far as the MVP. And so, what we want to do today is, unfortunately, I don't have the graphic because I lost a lot of shit when my computer went down. But you and I did our preseason rankings and where we thought each team was going to go. Go back and listen to that episode. There's plenty of videos up on YouTube of it for people that want to see the chart, as well as. But I wanted to take the time to break down what we feel like was our biggest hit, our biggest misses individually and as a pair. Excuse me. We'll start with on a good note. Now, it looked really rough, but a team both of us liked the beginning of the season was the LA Rams. And it just, the
Victory
stat
lap
here,
time. Victory lap time, you know what I'm saying?
it was, they just said they're the first team ever to go into their bye week with a losing record and make the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. So I'll start with you for your confidence in the Rams, not only at the beginning of the season we already established. What helped you keep, like you personally, what helped you keep some of the confidence in the Rams as they were sustaining all these injuries and stuff? I think they got off to a 1-4 start.
Yeah, 1-4. Great coach. Uh, really good quarterback. Still plays at a high level. A great wide receiver. Really good wide receiver. Still plays at a high level. Pushing great running back. So you take that offensively with a really good offensive line, young offensive line. Defensively, just when they draft versus my favorite guy in the draft. Tweeted that out a few times. Sure, I said that on the draft show in the
Mm-hmm.
offseason. Braden Fisk. I loved Braden Fisk as well. A guy that I got to kind of late in the process of it all, but also Florida State guy who played with Jerry Verse last year. A guy that I loved playing inside defensive tackle, and could really rush the quarterback. Super athletic. First discovered him at the combine. He killed it. And of course, Byron Young going back to last year, playing with Aaron Donald and replacing Aaron Donald this year. They had the pieces. Linebacker wasn't a great place for him. The secondary wasn't ideal, but I did think they had some good pieces there to make plays on the back end, which they've proven they can do and they have done. Just I never had reason to doubt this team could be successful. It's just a matter of health being on their side and how the division will play out. And obviously we both picked the 49ers to win the division just based on the talent of it all. But we both had the 49ers winning the division by like a game or like
Mm-hmm.
a two maybe. We didn't have them winning the division by a wide margin. So
Yeah.
to to see all of that play out, I'm really happy to be right about the Rams, but it's just good to kind of see that franchise keep it going.
No, 1,000%. The Rams are, as adult me analyzes sports more and more, is there's just a clear what is a good organization, what is not. All these organizations have talent because anyone who makes NFL is talented, and almost every team has a handful of guys who are Pro Bowl level or better. But you can see organizationally, like the Rams draft, like the Rams knew Aaron Donald was going to retire. Like he told them before he told the public, he's like, look, I got a year, maybe two left in me. And so they started drafting to replace him on that side of the ball. That's what a good organization does. Versus if you just listen to a lot of talking heads, they tell you, oh, no, you don't draft D-tackle. You have Aaron Donald. What are you doing? But because from an ownership perspective, a coach, GM, and yes, even at quarterback Stafford, who this is to me who Stafford probably should have been thought of for the longer part of his career. But when he was in Detroit, Detroit was a hellhole. And it shows you just like structurally as a franchise, Matthew Stafford, this is probably the quote unquote least talented he's ever been just due to age. His arms, I'm not going to say his arm now is as good as his arm was at 23, 24 years old. But you
Hmm.
can just see the difference in an organization like Detroit that had no idea what was doing versus him with the Rams, several playoff trips, obviously won a Super Bowl a few years ago. And that's with a guy who I thought was going to be a bigger contributor. Is Cooper Kupp is not a very well kept secret at this point. He is clearly on the end, like the end of his career is clearly coming much faster. But even with that, again, they've drafted young guys at these positions they were already good at. They were still drafting young guys, knowing that, hey, look, we are going to have to turn this over. This is the NFL. This is how this works. I'll go to a team that probably the biggest surprise, I would have to say, is the Vikings. Sam Darnold joined a list, and this is insane. The quarterbacks that have thrown for 4,000 yards and 14 wins in a season. It's Mahomes twice, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Kurt Warner, and Dan Marino. Now that list has Sam Darnold on it. Both of us, because when we did
First
ours,
round pick, top 10 selection, Sam Darnold.
Apparently, it's all coming together. It's like that's like, and that list of guys, that is again like Mahomes, Brady, Manning, like these are the greatest guys ever to do this. And it's like, oh yeah, now of course Sam Darnold's there. Third overall pick. When we did our show, we put the Vikings down at 4th because the news of JJ already missing the season had come out. So I'll pass it back to you. Would the Vikings be your biggest surprise this season? And just individually, like for Sam Darnold too, you admittedly said, you're like, look, he's a USC guy. I'm gonna have some hope for him, but it's probably going to be rough. So how was your view of how the Viking season has played out and Sam's season?
Surprised at the level of winning they've done. Not surprised at the success he's been able to have, just because he's playing with who I still think is the best wide receiver in the league, even though I know Jamar Chase is having an incredible season, all-time great season. I still think Justin Jefferson is the best guy in the league. He's been able to play with him, being able to play for a great play caller and head coach in Kevin O'Connell. Had Christian Darrisaw for majority of the year before he got hurt on that Thursday night. So the offensive line was really productive. It still is pretty productive for him. Running back, obviously bringing Aaron Jones. I thought the running game would have been successful regardless, just because, like I said, I think O'Connell is one of the better play callers in the league, one of the best play callers in the league. But having Aaron Jones, it only makes that easier. Jordan Addison taking that second year bump and just getting better. He's in that class with Zay Flowers, with some other guys from that class, obviously from last year. They'll come back to me as we do the show, but and just having productive pieces. But the level of winning to get to 14 wins is like shit, and. Brian Flores, I just don't know what you say. Like what he's doing with that defense that has talent. It's not a defense that's void of talent, but outside of Harrison Smith still plays safety at a high level. They brought over Jonathan Grenard from Houston, who was a really productive pass rusher. But you're getting top-notch play out of Stephon Gilmore at age 34 at the cornerback position. Like fucking what's his name? It's escaping me. The linebacker that they have.
Yes.
Do they have Robert Spillane? Is it Robert Spillane? Or is he still? He's not with the Raiders no more, right?
No, but their defense to me, it's to your point, like it's very much it's closer to a no-name-esque defense versus a like an all-star. Like Pittsburgh is a team that everybody goes like, oh yeah, you've got TJ Watt. Excuse me. Man, I'm saying no name and then I forget the fucking safety's name. Fitzpatrick. There you go. Minka Fitzpatrick. Like there's much more notable guys on a team like Pittsburgh versus to throw in my one is like Minnesota and Denver, which are probably the most improved defenses this year. They were more no names. Like between the two of them is like Harrison Smith on Minnesota and Pat in Denver.
Andrew Van Ginkel was balling. Andrew Van Ginkel was balling for them. And to that, like what he's been able to do, Brian Flores has been able to do on that, and I did not see coming. I did not see the defense being able to just ball week in and week out as they're doing right now. And I think that credit to him, and just they're my biggest surprise, not because of the production, but because of the level of winning that they're doing at such a high level.
Do they re-sign Sam?
I don't think they'll be able to afford him, number one. I don't think they'll be able to afford him because teams are just so quarterback thirsty every year. And for better or worse, for better or worse, JJ McCarthy is coming into a situation that he's going to have some struggles. He's going to be compared to what Sam's done this year, even though we've seen the ups and downs of Sam Darnold throughout this year.
Hmm.
But you invested that draft pick in JJ McCarthy for a reason. He was going to be the presumptive starter coming into the season for a reason. So I don't think he should lose that opportunity just because of injury, number one, and because Sam's played so well. And the same pieces will be here to execute this at a high level again. Is it 14, 15 wins? Maybe not, but that's okay. You'll take 11 wins with your first year starter with a shot at the playoffs, bringing back essentially the same group of guys. You'll take
Yeah.
12 wins because with the coaching, if you can keep the coaching staff relatively intact, if you can keep the roster relatively intact, your floor is 11 wins with this team. We all thought that this team would have a chance to really compete at a high level anyway. So
1,000%.
I don't see why JJ McCarthy wouldn't be the starter going into next year.
Going over to the South, so the Falcons are my biggest disappointment. We both were really high on the Falcons. A lot of moves they made in the offseason. It just felt like the momentum was there. You have multiple picks of like Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, who I think is the world is still trying to figure out. You see catches and plays like he made on Sunday, and you're like, oh yeah, this is clearly a generational tight end prospect. And then he goes missing for 6 weeks, and you're like, did he even play? It's really frustrating. Shout out to Kyle Pitts fantasy owners, just a hell of a train. Um, but I'll go there. So Atlanta would be easily my biggest disappointment from out of the entirety of the NFC.
Mhm.
Where would you put how Atlanta season gone, and then if they are your biggest disappointment, if it's another team in the NFC?
Um, no, Atlanta's not disappointing because the Falcons are falconing. So it's like the Falcons
That's
could only be a disappointment if they were doing something that was different from what the Falcons normally do. Everything they've done is what the Falcons have done for 30 years. Like, so I can't get on them
yeah.
for that. Um, they're a weird group. For me, I don't really take any disappointment from the South, more so just a surprise at how well Baker's still been able to play. Like
Mhm.
he's been able to continue to play this, and obviously, like he has great pieces around him as well. So like, don't want to discount that, but he Baker Mayfield is going to have a 4,000 yard, 40 touchdown season. Like he's played his ass off, and he's a bargain. Like the deal he's on
Mm-hmm.
is a bargain deal in comparison to what a lot of other guys are on.
Yeah, 30
You
mil a
know,
year.
72% completion percentage. Like he's playing at an incredible level. He's playing at the level of a top five quarterback this year. And when you look at everything going on, you can make that argument. And you would not be wrong to make the argument. So, I wouldn't say disappointment there, just more surprise that they're on their way to a what, fourth consecutive division title?
Yeah.
And the one year they didn't win it, they won the Super Bowl. So like it's like
It's nice to have Tom Brady on your team. I don't know what it's
it
like,
got
but I'm
a
sure it must be nice.
what they got going on there is really good. It's really good organizational structure. The roster's good. They've been able to make impact plays defensively without having the defensive units that they've had in years past. And that's just a
Mm-hmm.
credit to the coaching. Even though everybody hates Todd Bowles, I don't even think they're wrong to hate him, but it is what it is. Um,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
they've they're on their way to the playoffs. I don't think they're going to lose Sunday to the Panthers. Um, or the Saints. The Saints. They put the Saints. I super don't
Oh,
think they're
that's
gonna lose to
annoying.
the Saints. I think they have more chance to lose to the Panthers than the damn Saints.
That's
So and they just beat the shit out the Panthers this past Sunday. So like that says a lot
mm-hmm.
about where the Saints is at. So yeah, I'm just very, very surprised at the level of success Tampa's still been able to have, but more particular Baker. Like, he deserves a lot of credit for sure.
No, 1,000%. If and obviously resume and reputation matters, so this is not one of those like, oh, if you just like I don't like a lot of like blank profiles because it's like reputation matters. If a guy who's perennial the top 5 QB has another top 5 QB season, it is added on to their greatness versus a guy who hasn't done it. It does come as a surprise. For all the people out there that are like, oh, well, Joe Burrow, if the Bengals do find a way to sneak into the playoffs, like he should be MVP. Go look at Baker's numbers.
Very funny people they are.
Yeah, correct. Like Joe Burrow's again. Joe Burrow, trust me, just ruined my Saturday. But like, hell of a player. No one's denying that. Man, I love the salary cap. Get them off the same team. But Baker's numbers, if Baker had Joe's reputation, which is fair, he doesn't, and that's valid. Joe's been to a Super Bowl. Joe's got multiple seasons doing this. Fine. They have almost really comparable numbers, and Baker's going to win his division. Yes, his division is some shit, but he's going to win his division. And nobody is saying Baker Mayfield for MVP. Not even kind of. So to the Joe Burrow MVP people, that's your comp. Go argue with the Baker Mayfields of the world. Moving over to the AFC. Excuse me. I want to start here in the East. We went back and forth. I had Buffalo win the division to start the season. I just kind of with Josh Allen. You had the Jets. I just want to know, if Aaron Rodgers comes back, we're going to put the Jets 3 years in a row.
No. I fucked this one up. I fucked this one up bad. That's gonna be hand up very high. He's cooked. That we understood that. But he's still Aaron Rodgers. He still possesses a great football mind. He's still coming into the season with relatively good pieces. You had Breece Hall, who had a great year last year coming off the injury. You had Garrett Wilson in year 3. You know, you wanted to kind of see what he could get him based on everything. They had shit play calling. They fired the head coach maybe too early, maybe too late. Who knows? He's calling the shots, but not really. It's just dysfunction all over. So, given a different organizational structure, could this have been a different season? Maybe, but it was what it was, and he didn't make that any better. He didn't make that any better with his attitude. He didn't make that any better with his lack of leadership, nor his play on the field. He had a good December, from a numbers standpoint. He played really well. They bought Devontae Adams over for nothing. And when I say for nothing, I mean not only for the value they traded him for, but they also bought him over because it meant nothing to their season, and he was dumb for wanting to go there. He could have forced his way to a lot of contenders. If the way this sport works, if you want to go somewhere bad enough, the team will get you there. It's like this
Devontae
was a mess.
play.
He could still play at a high level. Because I seen him beat the Ravens single-handedly this year. I know he can still play at a high level. Like it was a mess. It was a mess. And I just thought that they were a better team with Zach Wilson at quarterback. That's fucking insane. And you would have thought that if Aaron Rodgers could just make them if the Jets were just the 12th ranked offense, the 13th ranked offense, to carry a top-notch defense, that would have meant success. And it couldn't even be that.
No, 1,000%. It was it's funny. Zach might be the next guy. We're on like this era of like reclamation quarterbacks. Like the pictures going around on Twitter all day today. It's like Baker and Sam Darnold were both on the Panthers 2 years ago. And it was like everybody thought, okay, they have to wear the lead, let down the Panthers, like that's NFL purgatory. And now both Darnold's gonna almost hit. Yeah, Darnold's already hit 40 touchdowns. Like Baker, the same. Like they're having great seasons. And so who knows? Maybe Zach Wilson's the next one. Who knows? You just gotta go. Get a little reclamation project for a year, and then go get Jets. Bring back Zach. Yo, if the Jets pay, and now I've been clear on this. I'm not paying Sam Darnold $50 million. I get it. I understand quarterback market. It's going to happen. Cool. If he goes back to New York for $50 million a year, man,
that'd be crazy. That'd be crazy.
Sam Darnold move up to one of my all-time favorite athletes. Like you get your leg back like that, and you walk back in, And for 50 a year, all I could do was clap it up, man. I'm gonna ignore the West because we both at the start of the season, Chiefs winning the division outright. Which, even with the division being better, you know how wild that is. Not a lot of people had, like the AFC West being like a top tier division, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, people were low on Denver. A lot of people were low on the Raiders. And the Chargers was kind of how much do you like Jim Harbaugh? The
Yeah.
AFC West was considerably better, where there's going to have an 11 and a 10 win team, or potentially 2 10 win teams, but what happens week 18.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs still won the damn division by 5 games. Like, in a
The
year
Chiefs,
that
the
we
Chiefs are
all think
going
they're
into the
bad.
playoffs. The Chiefs are going into the playoffs undefeated if Josh Allen doesn't go Josh Allen. And
It's
not only are they going into the playoffs undefeated, the Chiefs could have missed the playoffs
it's
entirely. This is how slim the margins are. This is how black magic works. This is how tight everything is.
it's yeah, no,
You're talking
it's
about a
so
team that could
crazy.
be undefeated or a team that could be talking about the number one pick in the draft.
It's man, look, I know it's insane. So I'm gonna leave them alone for right now. We'll go to the South, which if you want to talk about disappointment as a division, I don't think people had really high hopes for the NFC South outside of some Atlanta people. Um, but man, and I was high on the Texans even before CJ
AFC
started playing.
South, AFC South.
Yeah. I was high on the Texans. Like, you know what, I like some pieces, and then obviously worked out really well last year. And CJ had an amazing rookie year. And then I don't know if it's just karma or like, yo, don't go too fast. And I said this beginning of the season of the power rankings. I'm like, I feel like I want to say the Texans are like in that top 6 to 10 range because I do feel like CJ is ascending to that space. And if you have that quarterback, what I think this defense can play, and Stingley's had a hell of a year, and they got 2 great pass rushers, like I think they're almost there. And then the Texans feel, and this is someone from which for the potential 7 seed. I feel like the Texans are the team. If all 6 AFC playoff teams got to choose who they want week 1 of the playoffs, that would be the team they want. Are the Texans just not as good as we think? Like, what's going on with CJ? Like, what do you make out of the AFC South, and specifically the Texans? We know why the
For,
Jaguars suck.
for me, it's pretty simple with the Texans. The offensive line, not only because of injury, obviously, but also due to play, like they've regressed. Um, CJ's in a situation where he didn't have Nico for multiple weeks at a time because of a hamstring injury. Then Stephon Diggs tore his ACL. As Tank Dell is running the corner and starting to look like his pre-injury self again, he blows up his knee. In a
That was
shitty
rough.
situation, still praying for him. Um, their running game, continue to commit to it, and it's not explosive at all. Joe Mixon's been good statistically; the numbers look good, but the run game is not that effective. Um, if you look at the numbers, and due to the offensive line's incapability to create big lanes for Joe Mixon, he'll get his 100 yards, but he's chugging to it like it's grinding out 100 yards. It's not your Saquon. It's not your Derrick Henry. Name a really good runner. It's not that. Um, you go to the defensive side, they have played really well, but they've dealt with a lot of injury on the defensive side. Jalen Petre's out, Jimmy Ward's out. They've had some issues. They've had issues throughout the second level. We talk about the linebacking unit; it hasn't been as good. Will Anderson, really good second year. He's still been able to get to the quarterback effectively. Danielle Hunter's been a good signing for them. He's still getting to the quarterback, but you're not getting the impact that they made last year when they looked like that young defense flying around making plays, things like that. So it's just been a regression from them. And obviously it starts with CJ being a quarterback, but I don't think everything around him has been as effective either as it was last year. And because of that, they've struggled. And you can also really see it when expectation is different. Because not only did we as the public have bigger expectations for them, but you can see they are a team that had better expectation for themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
it shows in the play when you're not meeting the expectation you have for yourself, the energy that you have on the field. And Christmas night, when they couldn't score from the 3 yard line against the Ravens, when just everything didn't go their way, you can really see that energy just. I'm not going to say they quit, but the life was just drained out of them. Like you can't score, you can't get stops. You're at home. It's fucking Christmas. Like this was a big marquee game for you to get some revenge last year for a team that dominated you and your first game of the season and your last game of the season, and you just had no answer for them. And it's tough. It is tough.
And I think it shows too of like and again, I was really high on him as well. But then when I started like mid-season, I was like, you know what? This is a lesson for everybody. The Texans were a fourth place team, awful, just 2 years ago, because they won the division. It's a bad division, so you pick up some extra division wins. And because they did win the division, they went from a fourth place schedule to a first place schedule. There was no progression here. This was just immediately boom. And we all expected them to have those similar level of results, but you're adding in 4 new first place teams for them to play. And so because of that, it's like, yeah, you are. It almost should have been in front of us. Like, okay, yeah, there is going to be more pushback. You're not playing as easy as a schedule. And again, because they're now, I think long term they're going to be fine, because I think the division is not just bad. I think it's dysfunctional. I like Anthony Richardson. I would also go nuts if my quarterback was completing 47% of his passes. Trevor Lawrence, I don't really know what to make out of. He's obviously coming off another injury. He's going to be on his third head coach. And the Titans, man, it can't get worse than Will Levis, I guess. So the division's dysfunctional, so I still think they'll see success. Obviously, they're going to be the 4th seed. They're going to host a playoff game. And them or Pittsburgh, 2 teams that are not playing great football right now. One of them's going to have to win. And, you beat Pittsburgh, you'll still feel good about consecutive years making it to the playoffs, winning a playoff game when, again, you were one of the worst teams in the league just 2 years ago. Finish off here in the North. I was wrong about Cincinnati. I did not think, and I'm pretty sure I owe Jesse Bates an apology, because Jesse Bates is either the greatest safety to ever play the game, and I just didn't give him his credit over the past 3 or 4 years, because this wasn't just a drop off of your defense was good, had a bad year, your defense was like any kind of regression, great to good, good to bad, but like this went from no one ever thought Cincinnati's defense was great, but it was good enough, especially with Hendrickson, Bates, like they had players. And this year, it just totally tunneled out, where Joe can have the kind of season he's having statistically, and it just doesn't matter, because you turn every other quarterback into Joe Burrow when your defense is that bad. So I guess I ask you, and then in Pittsburgh is the other team I think a lot of people would say is the big shocker. Are you surprised, as someone who watches this division really closely, are you shocked by how Cincinnati and Pittsburgh seasons have turned out? And I'll give you a minute to recap. We've obviously been recapping the Ravens week by week, but I'll give you a minute to fully recap the Ravens season as a whole.
To the Cincinnati of it, I am shocked at how bad the defense is. It's like I've said it in the chats. I don't think I've had a chance to say it on the shows. Oh, no, I said it on group chat, but it's the worst defense I've ever seen. And the numbers might not show that statistically, all that good stuff. Cool. They are not a unit that they're not a clutch unit. They're not a unit that's getting the big turnovers when you need it. They're not getting consistent stops. They don't stop the run. They don't stop the pass. They're 27th in total yards. Like, and when you watch them, it looks so much worse. It looks so much worse. And we're talking about a bottom 5, bottom 6 unit. Like it just looks so much worse. And for me, being someone that watches them because they're a division opponent, I just don't see where the impact is. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson is having a fantastic season. Don't want to dismiss that. I really don't. It just does not mean nothing when it's 10 other guys that don't look like they know what they're doing. A great sack season means nothing when everybody else is all over the place. The safeties they don't play good. Geno Stone, former Raven, hope he has success in Cincinnati, because Geno is a really good fucking player. seventh round pick who made himself into something. But they just don't look connected. They can look that way for a quarter, they can look that way for a half, but the second half it just falls completely apart. The next three quarters it just falls completely apart. And like I said, the numbers may not reflect how bad they are because obviously on a week to week basis, you could play a quarterback where things just shape out a certain way for you. And as bad as you may be, quarterback play can be that much bad, can be just as bad rather. But the unit is just not together, and I say it's the worst also because it's the worst defense I've seen because not just from a standpoint of like, okay, they gave up this many yards or this guy caught this many passes for this many touchdowns. This is a defense that 3 seasons ago or 4 seasons ago, this defense that went to the Super Bowl. They came back, they went to the AFC Championship game and were a unnecessary roughness play away from going back to the Super Bowl. Last year they get a mulligan. Joe gets hurt. He comes into the season hurt. A lot of shit is going on, roster wise and things like that, kind of up and down. I get it. Like, you're coming off a Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game, you're bound to regress. That happens. You come into this season, you aren't facing any of that. You drafted well to get pieces. You invested in younger players to give you a fresher defense, a newer look. You still have Trey Hendrickson. You still have Sam Hubbard. You still have vets to mix in with younger guys, and it just does not work. And that's not only a player thing, that's a coaching thing as well. And whatever Lou Anarumo was doing, it's just not working anymore, and there has not been an adjustment, there has not been a change. You can say that, oh, well, they're playing themselves into the playoffs. Obviously, something's changed. No, they're just scoring more points. They're
That's
just
fact.
scoring more points.
That's
That's what's changed. They're scoring more points, and they played the Cowboys on Monday night, and they almost lost that game. So, like, it's they
yeah.
need to overhaul the defense this offseason. I don't know if they will because they're the Bengals and they don't spend a lot of money. They're a very cheap organization.
Facts.
So it's interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, I'm very surprised by that. To the Pittsburgh of it all, I can make that short. Not surprised they had a good year. Not surprised they're having success. They are a weird organization. It's a cult. Uh, Colts typically have a lot of success until they don't. Colts are Colts are always good until they're not. Every Colt you can think of had a lot of success. They had a lot of success until
Yeah.
until the final day. Until until everybody had to gather around and drink Kool-Aid or have a shootout with the police or some shit. It is always good until it's not. And for Pittsburgh,
Oh
it
shit.
was good until it wasn't. They'll probably lose to Cincinnati Saturday. The defense is hurt and not performing as well. The age is starting to show. Cam Hayward got banged up uh, this past weekend. I think Joey Porter should be back from his concussion. Who knows what concussions? The TJ Watt injury is maybe it's less than what we thought. Maybe it's worse. Who knows? Offensively, they're kind of starting to get exposed a little bit there. We saw what the offense is without George Pickens. That hamstring injuries are very, very sensitive. So he could be 150 yards Saturday. He could miss the wild card game. Who knows how that's going to shape out? To the Ravens are what the Ravens are. At their best, they're a dominant team that can beat anybody. At their worst, they lose to the Raiders. Thankfully, they don't have to worry about playing a team like the Raiders anymore. So that's good.
Wild statement. But yeah.
The de
Yeah.
the defense, the defense has turned the corner as I knew they would. I kept that faith. I always knew that would happen. It was just a matter of a win. Um, Justin Tucker has turned it around. He just needed the bye. He really just needed the bye. It was not shit he could do week to week. A kicker kicking the football is something none of us, no matter how much football we watch, will ever know anything about. And the process that those guys have to go through when they're struggling like that after playing at such a high level is not something that can just be fixed in a week. It's going to take time, and he's seeming to have done that. He's He's been perfect the last few weeks. Extra points, field goals, made a few 50-yarders over the last few weeks. So that's good to see for Tuck. And offensively, man, best show in town. Like they can run the football at a high level. They're passing the ball at a high level, and yeah, the like still concerns offensive line wise. I'm not going to act like it's perfect. Still concerns with the inside offensive line when we talking guard. Falele can be exposed. Patrick McCarry can be exposed. That's not going to change. But being able to call plays around that, being able to call plays around your weaknesses is what makes champions. And if they're able to do that, great. They're going to have a tough fucking playoff run. They're either going to have to go through Pittsburgh, Josh Allen possibly, and Mahomes possibly. They're going to have to go through they're going to have to go through Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. Um a Denver defense maybe, or like I said, Buffalo or Mahomes. So we'll see
If
how
they
it
play
shapes out.
Denver, I'm gonna just say this: if the Ravens
It's
and Broncos were to play the it has to be the AFC Championship game, and y'all do not want me because that means Denver has to beat the Bills and the Chiefs in the same postseason. I don't even give a fuck about the Ravens at that point. I'm gonna just be real. Yeah, nah, that one's
the the Denver of
that's a
it all
Super
is
Bowl.
very the Denver of it all is very funny because obviously the Ravens beat Denver, but Denver didn't do shit they normally do, which I always pay attention to when it comes to potential rematches. I always pay attention to stuff like that and just playmakers. You know, if whenever you got to play a team with playmakers in big game situations, you'd rather not have to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
the Ravens put themselves in a position where they're going to have to go through. They're going to have to go through the cream of the crop if they want to get to New Orleans. So that should be fun. You know,
Yeah. Right now, it would be because they have the 3 seed. It would be the Chargers in the first round.
it could be if the Chargers and Steelers both win on Saturday. I think it's the Steelers actually. If the Chargers and Steelers both win this weekend, they'll play the Steelers.
Okay.
If the Chargers happen to lose and the Steelers win, then it would be the Chargers.
Do you have a preference, really quick, before we get you out of here? Do you have a preference as a fan?
Nah, not really. Because, like I said, they're gonna have to. You want to win the championship, man? You got to beat the motherfuckers in front of you. And like this, the playoffs. It's like you don't have no room to be trying to. You want it like it's not the NBA. I have no stress about the Celtics having to play a fucking 7 seed in the first round. For the NFL, if you it's
You're just
one
off for
game,
20 minutes. It's over.
it's one game, you got to be on. So like I don't have a preference. They need to worry about themselves.
No, it's valid. No, appreciate it as always, man. We're gonna do for anybody listening. We're gonna do a full breakdown. You're gonna see us on group chat. Full NFL playoff breakdown, including Will. And who knows? Will might got the Bears in there. Who knows? He might just bring his own bracket.
That's
Wait,
crazy.